Hi there, I'm Adeline, and it is so nice to meet you. Welcome to the 51st Celebrity Synastry chart reading, where we will be covering Gisele Bundchen and Tom Brady. For those new and returning, I take notes on a synastry chart looking at the personal planet signs, aspects, and birth times available house overlays. I also add my extra insights and interpretations along the way. Feel free to leave your own in the comments below. Before we start the reading, give this video a like and subscribe for more celebrity synastry chart readings. Let's get into it. Starting off with the sun, we have Gisele's sun in Cancer and Tom's sun in Leo. Tom is more dominant, I mean in a more masculine way, I guess he would be stereotypically. They have different temperaments and they share a personal approach to life. It's a warm and loving relationship and both get their feelings hurt easily. Tom is uncomfortable with Gisele's vulnerability. Gisele's sun in Tom's 10th house overlaid. Gisele sees Tom as an authority figure, okay, so potentially why he could be the more dominant one. Gisele believes she deserves respect from Tom. I mean, fair enough, everyone deserves respect. Tom enjoys the respect he gets from Gisele. Gisele accepts Tom without thinking, and Gisele thinks Tom is more intellectual than her. I'm already not obsessed with this. This is not a great start. Tom's sun in Gisele's 8th house overlaid. They have a strong bond and there's emotional dependence. I assume this would be more on Gisele's side because we did see how Tom is uncomfortable with that sort of vulnerability from her. Tom is captivated by Gisele and Tom may feel he cannot leave. Interesting, because I don't feel like he was the one that filed for divorce. I believe it was Gisele, so interesting. Gisele has the ability to transform Tom. This is kind of funny. I believe there is speculation out there that she really did transform Tom and made him who he is due to her witchcraft. I believe it is, she's rumored to be some sort of witch with powers, so, both feel initially afraid of this relationship, and Gisele may have come into Tom's life when he is at the bottom. Interesting. Both weirdly enjoy the darkness and depth of the relationship. I assume this would relate to Gisele's powers and witchcraft, whatever she does. Tom's sun square Gisele's moon. There's basic misunderstandings and practical disagreements. Gisele sees Tom as too rational and selfish. Yeah, I'm not shocked. Tom sees Gisele as too sensitive, we see repeated. There's general discontent and Gisele may feel resentful towards Tom over time. This is fascinating. Like we saw, he feels he cannot leave and Gisele is the one that's getting the built up resentment. Matches up well. So now it's time for moon. We have Gisele's moon in Scorpio and Tom's moon in Aries. These are both ruled by Mars in traditional astrology. They're drawn to each other's passionate natures and Gisele's deep emotions makes Tom uncomfortable. Why is this repeated too much already? We're not even that deep into the reading. Both have strong emotional responses and Tom's feelings are more simple than Gisele's. Yeah, I'm not really surprised. We've already seen that. Gisele's moon in Tom's first house overlaid. Both feel safe expressing their feelings. I assume probably just basic feelings, not necessarily deep ones. Gisele feels immediately safe with Tom and Gisele brings out a sensitive Tom. It's a tender and warm relationship. Tom's moon overlaid in Gisele's 4th house. It's love-hate and they have conflicting feelings. Interesting. I guess like on Gisele's part, because if she feels like more safe with Tom, but she also doesn't seem to like what is potentially bringing her safety, if he is a more sort of authoritative figure, in one way that can make you feel safe, but also over time can be irritating. They feel deeply bonded to each other and they are competitive like siblings. Interesting. Tom may feel like a parent to Gisele and both feel the need to spend time apart. Gisele's moon sextile Tom's Mercury. They have long conversations and they feel comfortable being open with each other. Interesting how we keep saying that they're very comfortable with each other. I assume it would have to be about everything else except emotions because that seems to make Tom uncomfortable. But potentially it could just be more simple emotional discussions because we did see that Gisele brings out that sensitive side in Tom. So maybe she helps get him out of his emotional shell a bit. There's a mutual understanding and there's a friendship here. Both like a busy dynamic. I'm not really surprised considering their careers. Value the other's opinion and advice. Gisele's moon trine Tom's Venus. There's a mutual appreciation and it is easy to compromise. There's natural affection and they are supportive of each other during conflict. They appreciate art together and they're a social couple. I definitely see the social couple, but they were definitely considered like a sort of like power couple. Gisele's moon conjunct to Tom's Uranus. There's an instant attraction, and unpredictability makes long term difficult. I assume this would just have to be related to their careers, particularly with Tom's career. Tom is dominant, we're seeing again, and there's an exciting meeting. Friends play a part in the meeting. I assume that's because we did see the whole friendship note earlier. I assume that's where it comes into play in links. They share an unusual lifestyle. In a way, yes, and they also do live a sort of more like a healthier lifestyle, which isn't bad, but I feel like for the general population, it is very different to be growing everything on your own and all of that. Or in general, just specifically buying like organic food. I feel like for the average person, that's not necessarily what they do. Tom brings excitement to Gisele, and Gisele creates an accepting atmosphere for Tom. So it definitely seems like Gisele does create a sort of like foundation for Tom to sort of feel safe, expressing some of his feelings with Gisele. Gisele sees Tom as unreliable. Again, I'm guessing this would have to do with his career, because if he is out like traveling and away at matches and all of that, I assume that that is kind of unreliable in a sense if you're not there all the time and consistent with your presence. Tom's moon opposite Gisele's Mars. Gisele finds Tom to be demanding. Both react instinctually to each other. We saw the whole like they have that emotional response and a bit stronger emotional responses and are reactive to each other, so it makes sense. They both get defensive and codependency is likely to occur. Okay. Tom wants commitment with Gisele. So now it's time for Mercury. We have Gisele's Mercury in Cancer and Tom's Mercury in Virgo. Conflict between Tom's realism and Gisele's lack of it. I assume this would have to be going to the emotional thing. Maybe potentially Tom is more sort of like practically minded. Gisele finds Tom snobby and selfish, and Tom is frustrated with Gisele's impracticality. Gisele teaches Tom how to consider feelings. This is an interesting thing that keeps getting repeated here. Gisele's Mercury in Tom's 9th house overlaid. Travel, culture, and philosophy are common topics of conversation. Tom is impressed with Gisele's knowledge, and Gisele gives Tom a greater perspective on life. Genuinely, it does seem to be so. Emotionally, definitely. Tom's Mercury in Gisele's 9th house of light, so this is a repeated aspect, just inverted. So Gisele is impressed with Tom's knowledge, and Tom gives Gisele a greater perspective on life. I feel like this would make sense that this is inverted on both ends, because they both do live very different lives, or are very different people. Gisele's a Brazilian supermodel, and Tom is like an all-American football player. Gisele's Mercury square Tom's Pluto. They have frequent intellectual arguments, and Gisele is overwhelmed by this dynamic. I would be too. Tom seems to be a bit more domineering, and I feel like if she's a very emotional person, it's kind of hard. Both may hold on to issues for too long, and Gisele wants to understand Tom deeply. Yeah. Gisele feels controlled by Tom, and Tom wants to know Gisele's secrets. Tom tries to control Gisele's thoughts, so I'm not surprised. We did see earlier that resentment builds over time for Gisele. This is likely why.
Now for the intermission. This video is brought to you by me, my Etsy store, Adeline the Astrologer. If you ever watch this and think, hey, I would like her to read my Synastry chart, well, I will. I do personalized Synastry chart readings on my Etsy store. I do both basic and detailed ones. The basic ones are a bit more simple to understand and really good for those just beginning out in astrology, getting their heads around it, or just as a fun gift idea. The detailed readings are very similar to what I do here, so it's a lot of it just with my insights and interpretation on the chart. So if you're interested in that and everything else, astrology and tarot, readings and gifts, definitely check out my Etsy store for that. I'm always releasing new other things there as well. And you can even just favorite the store just to support me for free. Thank you for listening, and let's get back to the reading.
Tom's Mercury conjunct Gisele's Jupiter. Gisele introduces Tom to lucky connections. Interesting. I mean, it makes sense, because I feel like, no offense to Tom, even though he is like famous in his own right, and I'm sure he has connections, I feel like Gisele would definitely have a lot more different connections and a lot more prominent connections, I would say. Gisele encourages Tom to expand his horizons. It's a relationship of learning, and traveling strengthens their relationship, which is nice, and we do see kind of repeated. There's a strong intellectual bond, and Tom helps Gisele be practical. Gisele feels her thinking is valued by Tom. This is interesting. I assume this is where I believe we did see Gisele feels a bit conflicted in this relationship. I assume this is where it comes from, because Gisele on one hand seems to be like not, especially her emotional thinking, it doesn't seem to be valued by Tom, but then we see these little bits where she does feel valued by Tom and Tom seems to actually listen, so it's a favourable business partnership. I don't believe they ever had any businesses together as such. So now it's time for Venus. We have Gisele's Venus in Gemini and Tom's Venus in Cancer. Tom likes Gisele's cheerfulness and intelligence. They get along well. There's a clash of values. Yeah, I mean, as far as we've seen, not necessarily values and like life philosophies, but definitely the sort of like natures and what they value prioritizing would be different. Giselle's teasing hurts Tom, and Tom wants a warmer relationship with Gisele. I assume that's why he doesn't necessarily understand Gisele. Potentially, he is that sort of like, macho guy where emotions equal scary and deep, and you don't want to go there. Where Gisele seems to want to be, that seems to be not necessarily a safe space, but she feels comfortable there. Potentially, Tom doesn't really find that comfortable and doesn't see having emotional discussions or whatever, an emotional relationship, as warmth. Gisele leans on Tom for emotional support. Tom appreciates Giselle's flexibility, and Tom is committed to Gisele. So we do see that Tom is committed to Gisele, which is nice. Gisele needs to pay more attention to Tom. I guess it would be in terms of like, because we did see like the teasing and like he wants a warmer relationship, potentially trying to listen to him, but he does seem to be a bit more domineering, so I'm not sure. Giselle's Venus overlaid in Tom's ninth house overlaid. They've shared interests and they may share the same social cycles we kind of see repeated. They get along well together, and Gisele has a friendly approach to Tom. So I assume that's what really drew Tom to Gisele, because we're seeing now friendly approach, but before she's very cheerful. Tom is accepting of Gisele, and Gisele teaches Tom how to have fun. Tom sees Gisele someone he has a future with, again with the commitment on his side. Tom's Venus overlaid in Giselle's sixth house. Tom feels he doesn't have much in common with Gisele. I'm not surprised. Like, as I said before, very different people, and also it seems like their basic natures are pretty different too. Gisele senses Tom isn't really into her. That's so sad. Neither sees the other as their type. I mean, the only thing I have to go off of the type, I believe Gisele was going out with Leonardo DiCaprio, who is pretty different from Tom. Together as a result of duty or obligation. Helpful and productive relationship. I assume this would be more leaning towards Gisele. It seems like she really helps Tom. Giselle's Venus sextile Tom's Saturn. Gisele sees Tom as a long-term person in her life. So it's nice that we're seeing they both seem to be very committed to each other, or at least were while they were together. Tom stabilizes Giselle's emotions. Interesting. There's a strong commitment and they are willing to make sacrifices for the other. They help each other in career, particularly on Giselle's, and it seems like helping with Tom. Giselle's Venus opposite Tom's Neptune. Tom doesn't like Giselle's idolization. Gisele is so caught up in love she doesn't know Tom. That's interesting, because we did see a couple times before, like, Gisele needs to sort of pay more attention to Tom. Tom communicates with Gisele vaguely. I mean, then how is she supposed to listen to you? But whatever. Tom needs to be careful of promising too much, and both find it difficult to stay. It's weird because, I mean, we saw, like, Gisele's, like, resentment building up, but also Tom feeling like he cannot leave would imply that he wants to leave. Tom has a hard time being realistic with Gisele. Lies occur to protect from pain. Yikes. Neither can define what attracts them to the other. Interesting how we see this, and also they don't see the other as the type. It's odd. Tom's Venus square Giselle's Mars. There's jealousy and possessiveness. There definitely is that element of possessiveness. I mean, if they're very committed to each other, that kind of plays in. Tom sees Gisele as dominant. I'm pretty sure we did see this already, and it's interesting how they both see each other as the more assertive one. Gisele sees Tom as seductive with no substance. We're seeing this again. She seems to seem as a bit more like superficial. So now it's time for Mars. We have Gisele's Mars in Libra and Tom's Mars in Gemini. These are both air signs. Tom tends to use his words as a weapon. Yikes. Gisele's passive aggressiveness annoys Tom. I mean, she definitely doesn't seem. I feel like Tom seems to genuinely be the more like sort of like active one, and Gisele seems to be the more passive one. Like, he seems to be a bit more needing to be a masculine man. Gisele's Mars in Tom's 12th house overlaid. Tom feels uncomfortable around Gisele. I mean, there generally does seem to be of like, I don't want to say walking on eggshells, but like, there does seem to be some key differences here. Like, Gisele brings out a hidden side of Tom. I seem to sort of have to be like helping him emotionally open up. The relationship is formed from having to protect one another. Weird how we see this and also relationship of duty and obligation. And I believe like Gisele met Tom when he was at the rock bottom. So what happened? I'd like to know how they met, because like also people brought them together, it seems like. So Gisele feels drained by Tom and Tom wants to protect Gisele. Tom sees the more fragile part of Gisele, which I don't want to say it's like lovely that he sees that, but it's nice that they both seem to like be able to be a little bit more vulnerable together. Tom's Mars overlaid in Gisele's 5th house. Tom likes to initiate dangerous activities, and Tom seeks admiration from Gisele. Gisele is flustered around Tom. Tom finds Gisele childish and obnoxious, so he definitely seems to view her as a bit more like silly and fun. There's possessive tendencies we kind of see again. Tom's Mars square Gisele's Jupiter. They meet in a fun way. I'd love to know how they met, because it seems to be very odd. Whatever happened, Gisele sees Tom as selfish, we see again. Tom sees Gisele's logic as hindrance. I want to skew this potentially what he sees as lack of logic, sorry. And, because she seems like a bit more of an emotional person, which Tom doesn't seem to appreciate. Encourage the other to be reckless, and Gisele may be a bad influence on Tom. I guess in the more traditional sense, if she is supporting him with her witchcraft and more esoteric practices, generally speaking, that could be considered bad. I don't know where else she would be a bad influence, honestly. That was the final aspect, bringing us to the end of the reading. If you are still watching, definitely comment your thoughts below. I feel like this was a very sort of interesting, insightful reading. I'd love to know how you guys interpreted this, but it seems to match up, in my opinion, very well to what we know as a public about these two. And if you have made it this far, please consider subscribing for more. I post these readings weekly. Besides that, give this video a like, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!